Hey guys, Braided Zero here. I've had quite a bit of time to play with the Ghost Recon Breakpoint beta this weekend, and going into released week, I wanted to make a video of my 10 tips going in to help you conquer this game as best as possible. Let's jump right in. Tip number 1 would be to use the Bivouacs. Along your tracks through Aurora, you will find these random smokestacks if you're in helicopters high above, or you'll just wander across them. These little campsites are really good for being able to restock up on weapons, respec your skill tree, but more importantly, you can choose certain perks that you can increase stats of, say increase of 10% experience gain for an hour, as well as giving yourself vehicles and providing you with a location that you can fast travel to. I recommend finding at least a couple in each region. That way, when you have a specific mission you need to go to, you can quickly fast travel to a certain bivouac and then gear up before you head out to a mission. Tip number 2, do things that align with your class. Really study each of the classes and choose the one that best aligns with how you play. Don't choose the one that you just maybe think will work best with the game, or someone or some other YouTuber has shown you. Choose a class that really aligns with how you play. I chose the sharpshooter because I prefer to sit back and snipe my way through certain missions instead of being up front in the battle, and it really helped me with being able to perk up real quick and get a lot of experience gain each time I gained a new class level. Tip number 3, use prone camo. This will come in handy when taking on engagements, but also with going undetected away from drone planes that will fly over. Additionally, whenever you find yourself in a sticky situation, it takes somebody walking directly up onto you in order to find you. And they like to say that drones won't find you in prone camo, but they will. It just is a good way of being able to protect yourself beforehand. Tip number 4, which is kind of a niche little bit of a tip, but some helicopters do have guns. I did not figure this out immediately, but a little bit of a ways into playing the beta, there are a few of the helicopters that you can shoot guns from, which really helps with being able to just blow through certain encampments and get some rewards without having to jump out of your plane. Especially if something doesn't drop, then you can just move on to the next. It's really good for gear farming. Tip number 5, keep some kind of a sniper and an auto rifle in your inventory, or whatever your other preferred method would be. Maybe a DMR and some other kind of a close range, maybe a shotgun. You never know when you're going to need a long range and a close range engagement. I just would not recommend having 2 of each. Tip number 6, turn your mini map on at all times. In the very beginning when I was playing, I noticed that the mini map would disappear once I was away from enemies or outside of a certain objective, and it's really difficult whenever you're trying to search for gear or drops or something that the map disappears. You're constantly trying to reload the map that's in your actual inventory. If you go into the settings, you will find a setting to turn the map on all the time. I recommend it unless you're doing some kind of a no profile, no anything on your screen run, and you're just an elitist like that. Tip number 7, try not to max out your stamina bar. This is really going to come in handy with the survival aspect of the game. You don't want to max out your stamina bar because first off, you can't run more, but then also your stamina bar each time you do that will decrease until you get a canteen and drink some water. I don't recommend doing that in the beginning. Maybe once you're a little bit later in the game, it's not as important, but especially for your early game run-throughs. Tip number 8, use drones and your scope to mark enemies before getting into engagements. This really comes in handy maybe in later parts or in certain missions where you're taking on multiple enemies. If you're just running up on a small encampment of guys, maybe 2 or 3 guys, it's probably not that important because you can take them out pretty quickly, unless those guys are much higher gear score than you or they're wolves. But if you're going into a mission, go ahead and take a second, use your drone or your scope and just tag the people. That way you can monitor them. And if you get into the engagement and it gets a little bit sticky, you can watch their indicators on your mini map to make sure that you're not flanked. Tip number 9, if you find a gun that you like And I do recommend to try as many different gun types as possible before you settle on one. When you find the one you like, upgrade it. It only costs a little bit of some supplies, which you get from dismantling other weapons. And it's not a huge investment. I mean, I'm sure later on in the game, once you've dismantled enough and you'll just start selling them, you'll have plenty of different weapon parts that you can upgrade. Go ahead and invest in a gun that you like, maybe a few, and upgrade them to the different marks. Please note that you do need to upgrade to the different marks inside your skill tree before you can do that. Last tip, tip number 10, expect and prepare to die a lot. That's one of the big things that you can expect in this game is you're going to come into a lot of really difficult enemies and you're going to die a couple times before you maybe complete a mission. That's why I definitely recommend finding bivouacs so that you can always go back, restock up on supplies, but use your drone to mark enemies. Make sure that you're upgrading your weapon, always having the highest gear score you can, and maybe even camping back and sniping. You can also use the bivouacs to change the time of day, that maybe a different time of day may be better for you, but always expect and prepare to die just a lot. It's okay, it's a part of the game. Hey, thanks for checking out the video. If you like the content, subscribe and follow the channel. I'm going to be pushing out a lot of Breakpoint content as we move into the release. I also like to push out a lot of other shooters and maybe even some indie game content.